Now, what I'd like to do is to celebrate some of our coaches and do a quick Q&A, and I'd like to invite Salim back on stage, please. Emilie, who's the CEO of ExO Works, Jaroslav, who's the CEO of OpenExO, and Francisco. If you could join us, please. And these 4 people are amongst the core team. 2 on this side, 2 on this side, OpenExO in the middle, and that's where we are. And this gives us an opportunity to actually have a conversation with them directly. The idea, ladies and gentlemen, on this side is that we'll share their real-time experiences about companies who are engaging with this exponential formulas and methodologies and so on. Because one of the words that hasn't been mentioned in this evening is the word how. We've heard the why, we've heard the what. Salim and the team here, they talk about the how to do it, how to execute, how to put the methodologies in, what's happening to the companies, how are we going to change, how are we going to move forward. So it's very, very real, and it's very, very specific. And I think that, to me, has been one of the key things that resonated with me. So, Salim, do you want to open up with a comment on what are your experiences when you actually go to these companies? You mentioned Procter & Gamble, you mentioned an insurance company. What happens when you go there and you sort of like wake them up?
Well, historically, there's been quite a long process of kind of waking up. When I was running the 1-week program that we used to run at Singularity, what would typically happen is you get some executive from BMW coming over, and then when they went back to Munich, their hair was on fire, going, oh my God, drones, autonomous cars, Hyperloop, virtual reality. Their tagline is, we're the ultimate driving machine, and we're pretty clear nobody's going to be driving, right? And so he's pretty freaked out. But when they get back to Munich, they sound like a crazy person. And they get a white coat and some medicine, and they're put in a corner. Please stand over there while we do the important work. Then typically 6 months later, somebody else comes out. They go back with the same opinion and ravings. Senior management triangulates and says, what's happening over there? They'll have me or Peter or Emilie or one of us come and speak over there. Then they'll do the Silicon Valley tour. Then they'll set up an outpost in Silicon Valley. And after a long period of time, typically on average 3 years, we found that they finally were ready. But the opportunity cost of that 3 years is near infinite today. And I use BMW because if you think about that company, you know, with the dispersion, with the change in technology, that's a pretty big tension if you think nobody's going to be driving, to their tagline being, we're the ultimate driving machine. That's a big tension they have to navigate. Every manufacturing specification, engineering spec, design aesthetic, protocol is saying optimized for the driver, and the world's going the other way. So this is the pattern that we're trying to shortcut with the tool set. And we've been working on how do you solve this immune system problem, because it's pervasive in any company more than, say, 80 to 100 people and higher, and bigger because it's a function of size of the company. Then you get to the public sector, where it's the public policy is the immune system, and then God help you if you try and attempt fixing academia, which is the ultimate immune system.
Thank you. That's a good start. Now, you talk about the amygdala and the fear factor. Do we feel that when you go out there, you have to scare the hell out of people for them to move, or are you trying to still motivate them? Because are enough people moving in the OpenExO platform that you're creating?
Well, can you hear me? Yeah, it's working. I would say that, you know, I've been actually before I joined ExO, I was working as a kind of career coach and trainer, and kind of looking a lot about how people change actually in their personal lives. Right. And I have seen kind of 2 big reasons to change. One of them is fear-driven, one of them is aspiration-driven. And I see the same across companies. I think there are companies that are afraid of what is happening, and they are kind of looking at it more from a perspective of we need to do something to survive. But I also see a lot of people on top of those companies that have a lot of ambition. They are seeing it as an opportunity. They are seeing it as a chance to be a pioneer and to create something new. So I would say that both of these motivations are very powerful if they are harnessed in the right way. But what I think is what we do is when we work with companies, for normal human being, you know, the cost of changing, like we kind of like status quo. Of course, we speak about change, but in reality, you know, we like things the way they are, and, you know, we like some stability. So the cost of changing is actually higher than not changing. But after we look at some of what Salim was presenting, look at some of the technologies and everything, suddenly this equation swaps. Suddenly the cost of not changing actually becomes higher than changing. And when that happens, we see that companies are ready to actually seriously consider moving forward and doing something different.
Emilie, you're doing a lot of work with some large corporations, and you are heading ExO Works. What is your experience in terms of moving the needle, getting those people out there, and actually engaging with you on a more serious level rather than the average boring consultant, because nobody gets fired hiring McKinsey. So it's easy to pay them 5 times the price, but what results do you get? What's the tension do you feel there? What kind of experiences are you getting at places like Procter & Gamble or telecoms companies and various others?
Well, if a consultant comes in, they're going to tell you what to do. You don't actually have the DNA of the company involved. And so if you actually coach people and tell them that their job is to actually change the world, to change the lives of millions of people, and you tell them that you actually trust them to do that, and you put the resources of an enormous company behind that, the level of passion and inspiration that comes out of it in creating an initiative that really can be implemented and do something extraordinary is amazing. So we actually create a portfolio of 8 different initiatives from every sprint, and we see that there are all sorts of additional effects from that. So one of them is just retention of really fantastic people in the company, identifying stars, even if they were entry-level people in enormous corporations. But we also see the flow-on effects with the profitability in a couple of years. So one of our clients has actually said that we were responsible for doubling their revenue and tripling their profits in the 3 years since their sprint. And part of that was that we had taught their teams to work so fast and so effectively that when crises hit, they were actually able to reconstitute those teams and create new things that they released into the market extremely fast, and that really drove their profitability. So it's been the mindset shift, the new tools, the speed of working, and the ability to bring in all these amazing new technologies.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Francisco, you are co-author of the book. You're a thinker. You're deep into the science of the methodology. Can you just share with us very, very quickly, what's that journey and what can people expect? There are people here from telecoms companies, there are people here from banks, there are people here from hospitals. What's the methodology and why should they trust the methodology?
Well, because it works, right? I think that works. But well, can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think that one of the most interesting things that Salim and the whole team did with the first book was that, well, Salim wasn't really inventing the ExO model, like the exponential organization. Salim was very wise, and he was like, well, managing a team of people among some of us among them, where we were analyzing the different attributes, like the commonalities that made those companies scale in an exponential way. And that was the model of ExO as a whole, right? But now we are not talking about the technology. The technology is there. There is I mean, it's something that is democratized, right? So everyone has access to technology. Now the question is how to leverage technology and how to start doing things in a different way and how to build the businesses of the future, right? When I finished my PhD on artificial intelligence, and I was already an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur, but I built another business focused on the AI that we were building at the university, and I did also an MBA. So I started to apply everything that I learned into the MBA in that business, right? And we failed. We failed because we were trying to build the businesses of the future using the traditional methodologies, right? So with this second book, we did something very interesting. First of all, we started to think how leveraging AI, nanotechnology, 3D printing and all these technologies, we could start building the businesses of the future. That was the goal, right? So the first thing that Salim and I did was co-founded the ExO Works and start a process, the ExO Sprint, and we were learning by doing how to improve this process, right? So the process is not focused on why the world is changing, which is something that we all know now, right? It's more about the how to do it, right? And well, by having these experiences with different companies and based on our own experience, we were putting the process together. Something very, very important is differentiating between innovation and disruption. It's not the same. Innovation is when we are trying to improve something that is working. Disruption is when we create something new that makes the previous thing obsolete, right? And this is one of the key factors why the immune system always attacks either innovation or disruption. Because if we try to change a business model that is working, the immune system is going to attack us, right? So what we do in the sprint is basically creating initiatives that are focused on innovation, on improving the existing business, and on the other hand, initiatives that are more focused on creating the businesses of the future, right? So during the workshop tomorrow and during the summit tomorrow, you are going to experience it. You are going to have a few sessions on the methodology, you are going to learn how the methodology works, and you are going to work on real case studies, because the best thing to learn a methodology is learning by doing. So tomorrow you are going to really taste the how, the sprint, and the good news now is that we don't only have technology that can change the world. We have the recipe, like the steps, the know-how, in order to really transform industries. So we have put together this into a book. This is why we are called OpenExO, because we are opening our methodologies, and now the book is available for everyone to run sprints.
Okay, super. We've heard from all of the experts here. Any questions from the audience? Guy, you always ask a question.
I don't want to disappoint you. Obviously, a lot of your work is to do with increasing profitability, performance, responding to exponential change rates, etc., for private companies and public companies. I'd like to address a question in the area of sort of social good. And you're probably familiar with the work of Michael Green, who compares GDP with social progress index, etc., and that together, from a very low start point, GDP solves a lot of problems. But once you get to a certain level, you know, GDP is a measurement which is completely blind to happiness, and to all sorts of elements. You know, so countries like Costa Rica, etc., score very well in that area. Their GDP is way lower than other countries. The US, for example, has high GDP and not a very good PSI rating. My question is this: how much time and how applicable are the work that you do to governmental work and institutional things which are outside the private sector?
So the reason we did this work was so that we could get to that specific point. Because we started with the private sector because it's a very identified domain, it's very constrained, and you can address it more easily, and there's a very clear motive of increasing profit or increasing revenues and transforming the company. And every one of the Global 5,000 has to go through something like this with or without us, which is why we open sourced it. So we honed our capabilities there because nobody's ever, in our knowledge, been able to create a process that moves culture, leadership, management thinking 3 years ahead in a short period of time. And so we got excited when we see that. Then we created the nonprofit to say, could we address this in the public sector? Because much harder, etc. The holy grail is actually, let's go transform society globally. That's our massive transformative objective, and our purpose is to literally transform. There's 4 observations that I have about the world today, which we've kind of summarized today. One is that we have 20 Gutenberg moments hitting us, and this is going to wash away all of the mechanisms by which we run the world, which were largely designed for a world a few hundred years ago, right? Not for today, and definitely not for the trillion sensors coming down the pike. The second is this breaks all of our institutions, and the ways in which we work all change radically. The ways in which we manage the world, the economic basis on which we run the world is extractionary to the planet, and we could wipe ourselves out by keeping on this model. The third is that clearly our existing leadership cannot navigate us through this world. All of our leadership structures are designed to train people in incremental, stable, predictable, linear, incremental outcomes, and the train is pulling into Black Swan Central, right? And so navigating through chaotic times is not something, especially on the political side, our leadership is set up to do. And the final is we're starting to see almost all activity and implementation of new ideas, new breakthroughs happen at the city level very little at the country level, and forget the UN as a general principle, except for crisis management, etc. And so if that's the case, we need to re-architect and recreate all of our institutions from a grassroots kind of city level around the world, which is city-states are becoming the new kind of organizing principle and the focus of attention of a lot of attention and work. So if that's the case, we have to re-architect it all. To do that, if you can't bring in new ideas unless you break the immune system and let those new ideas flower. So we spent a lot of time focused on how do you solve that immune system problem, private, public, and then general, how do you solve journalism in general? If you try and update the business model in journalism today, the journalists fight you. Forget the rest of the public. So we're creating general tool sets and creating an ecosystem where anybody can go address those in different ways. And so that's our purpose. We have a very massive purpose.
A high-level question in the telecom sector, please. Alain Janvier from Saudi Telecom. He's come all the way from Saudi Arabia. And then I'll ask Raya a question. As a young millennial who's created this awesome academy, and you're trying to reinvent education, and that's really one of the slow areas. So 2 questions, hopefully, from there. Sir.
Thank you, Tariq. Is this working?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I've come over from Riyadh to see you guys. It's been wonderful. Actually, the image of the Lost Planet movie kept coming into my head. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. Anyway, Saudi Telecom, great big state telecom. They used to be the Ministry of Telecom Communications. They're carrying that legacy culture. I went to them about 10 years ago when I was with Ernst & Young, and we talked about their culture and this structure of theirs being their biggest risk. They didn't like to hear that. How do we take this into that environment where you have a leadership that knows they have to change, they don't understand really how they need to change or what they need to change to, and they're saddled with this legacy culture where it's extremely hierarchical, 2 layers down can't talk to the top layer without going through the middle guy?
So I'll give you a constructive answer and then the real answer. The real answer is they probably won't be able to make it, right? Because the rigidity of the thinking and the legacy thinking dominates too much, especially in a former state-owned enterprise, and they have a very difficult, they're too anti-fragile, they're too brittle to adapt. We have run the sprint with DIWA, the Dubai Water Authority. So we have experience in running it in different languages, different cultures, et cetera, et cetera. The enormous opportunity is not to try and transform the core, because it doesn't work. What we do is we take the 25 young leaders, future lieutenants of the business, and we take them to the edge of the organization, and we build into adjacent spaces. So Larry Page came to me a few years ago and said, hey, your unit at Yahoo is successful. Should I do that at Google? And I said, no, you'll get this whole immune system problem. Do something like it. Keep it stealth, point it away. And you see the result with Google X, where they have their core capability of managing information, and they had hardware at the edges to go into adjacent spaces with different organizational units. The poster child in the corporate world is Nestle. For years, they tried to run Nespresso as a line of business. Failed. Finally, they put it separately, and boom, it's a $6 billion line of business, right? So when you separate it out and unconstrain it from the legacy mothership, enormous things can happen. The master of this technique is Apple. And yes, they have a great design capability and a technology supply chain. I argue that Apple's real innovation is organizational. Because what they do, unlike anybody else in the world, is they'll form a small team that's really disruptive. They'll take that team to the edge of the organization. They'll keep them totally stealth and secret, right? And they'll say to that team, go disrupt another industry. Nobody does this. Nobody's even noticed that this is what they do. So they have a portfolio of teams ready to go into different industries. When they see something ripe for disruption, that's where it'll go. In our view is that the future, all large organizations will be architected this way, going from a standard operating model to a platform to building an ecosystem of related capabilities that fit together well and are additive in the whole. Either people organize that way or they will die. And my thesis is most will not make it. So the question is, which one do you want to be? And if you're willing to have it, and the beauty about some of the state-owned enterprises, they actually have directives. They can go get it done and do a command and just reorganize this way. And if I can tell the quick story of Haier, I'll give the quick story. Can I? So Chinese manufacturing company Haier makes appliances, 55 million fridges a year. 80,000 people organized in a strict hierarchical structure, very command and control, top-down structure. CEO looks at his organization a few years ago and decides, I can't meet my corporate goals this way, and literally blows it up. Turns 80,000 people into 2,000 autonomous teams of about 40 people each. Each team elects their own leader, each team has a P&L, each team does whatever they want to do. Right? Now, if you go to any MBA school or any legacy consulting operation, you say, we want to make 55 million fridges a year, you will be told, here's how you centralize everything, product strategy, demand forecasting, inventory management, supply chain, because how are you going to control it all? And yet you can do it in a totally different way. They've tripled their market cap by doing this. GE 2 years ago gave up and sold GE appliances to them because they can't compete. Because 2,000 teams kind of, when they need to do product strategy, instead of a central team looking at focus groups and looking at market research and guessing wildly what features should go into the new fridge, 2,000 teams vote, and the collective wisdom is infinitely better at deciding what features than a centralized product team. And so they beat everybody in this model. And everybody has more fun, right? And so and the big challenge in the Western industrialized world, Europe, the US, et cetera, is that we have to unlearn 50 years of management thinking and do things in a new way. And that's an enormous challenge. In the emerging markets, people can leapfrog to that. And we're seeing a huge explosion of exponential organizations as a result occur in emerging markets, which we're really excited about.
And a final question from Raya about education. How are you changing education? I know you've created a wonderful academy. Tell us about what Academy is, briefly, and how you're changing the world.
So I'm the founder and CEO of Academy, and we offer future-focused and wisdom-based education for high school. So our curriculum actually covers a lot of the things that you're seeing in today's sessions, especially with an emphasis on the ethics that you mentioned, on the soft skills like creativity, critical thinking, compassion, and all the things that are not covered, all the competencies that are not covered in traditional education. We're an award-winning team. We've been partnered with the UAE Ministry of Education and just expanding our curriculum, offering it as a supplement with the vision of eventually replacing education as it stands. And my question for, really it's open to everyone on the panel, is, so the challenge we're seeing in education is you're having an immune response not just from one stakeholder. You're having an immune response coming from multiple places. So there's the institutional immune response. They've had a model that's been, they think has been working for them. You often have an immune response from the parents who have certain expectations and traditional mindsets. You have an immune response from students sometimes. Once they're old enough, they're resistant to change as well. And you have an immune response from a government level or a policy level as they regulate a lot of, it's a very heavily regulated industry. So the open question here is, how do you tackle all of these different immune responses that are coming at any disruptive innovation in the education space?
Wonderful question. Thank you. Anybody?
Emilie.
I think that in society we have actually broken down trust. We tell our workers, you are only good at this, this is all you're allowed to do, don't do anything else. And as a result, we tell our children, this is what you're allowed to do, this is what you will learn right now. And we break down this idea of lifelong learning and actually doing something interesting and thinking outside the box. And until we actually go and tell people, think broader, and actually we do trust you to have these ideas and to see them through into practice, that's how we'll actually get to the society that you're talking about, in my view.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you like to quick comment?
Yeah, well, I have two thoughts about it. Well, first of all, as you are saying, I think that education is one of the places where the immune system is bigger, right? Because it's a very old institution, as Salim actually was mentioning, and so on. So I think that you are doing a very smart thing, like working with the Ministry of Education and with existing high schools and so on. And this is kind of the core that we were talking about before, right? So you are improving the core, but you cannot really reinvent, as you know, and we were talking about that from the inside, right? So in order to reinvent education or any other industry, you have to start from the outside, on the edge, right? So that's the way to do it. In parallel, I think it's good to have core and edge in parallel. But another thought that I was having about education is like, well, we were talking about before about the Maslow pyramid, right? And as basic needs are met in the world in general, right? I think that education now is very, very focused on how you get a job in the future, right? How you get a job. So we are training people to basically work in the future. But in the future, we might even have AI doing the work for us, right? Or we for the AI, we don't know yet, right? But what I think is that our education is very job focused now, and I think that in the future will be more like purpose focused, because at the end of the day, since we are going up and up and up into the Maslow pyramid, I think that we don't have to train our children in order to look for a job, but to find their purpose and achieve it, right? So that's my personal view, and I think that you will do that on the edge, and I think that might be your thinking, right?
I love your comment about the parental immune system, because we have a huge issue there. If you went back 1,000 years, one generation could teach the next generation how to think about the world, because things didn't change generation to generation very much. You could say, look out for that bush, don't eat those, if you hear that noise, run, etc., etc. If you think about how different our lives are from our parents, fundamentally different. And the kids, the next generation of kids, that gap is actually widening. The parents of this generation have no ability to guide the kids of the next generation, none at all. Right? Except in ethics and so on. And breaking that gap because they think they know is the biggest one. Right? Legacy, cultural issues, et cetera, et cetera. Every Indian kid is told you better go become an accountant or an engineer or a doctor, and God help you, if you don't. On pain of death sometimes if you break the family formality. And you go through that paradigm, and you have an enormous resistance from a cultural perspective around this. And that's the other type of immune system. And it's an imperative that we break that. Because when you look at this younger generation, it's mind-boggling what they're capable of. And I'm going to tell a quick story here. So bear with me. Jack Andraka. Anybody know this story, Jack Andraka? So this 14-year-old kid, his uncle dies of pancreatic cancer. And he gets really upset. Why did he have to die? And it turns out we don't have an early stage test for pancreatic cancer. We mostly discovered in stage 3 or 4, and then you have 98% mortality. He gets obviously very upset about this. So he's a bit of a hacker kid, and he starts downloading clinical trial data from Google. And he runs machine learning algorithms on this clinical trial data and finds a biomarker that would indicate pancreatic cancer. And he says, there's an indicator. Could I detect that biomarker early? So he does a bunch more Google searches, and he finds that carbon nanotubes might be really great at detecting this biomarker. So he writes a 5-page thesis, sends it to the top 200 cancer researchers in the US, and says, I need about 4 months in your lab to test my hypothesis, going back to the testing hypothesis old way, but valid. 99% of these researchers look at his paper and go, he's 14. He doesn't have a medical degree, he's not a doctor. He can't possibly figure this out. And they drop it in the bin. And to be blunt, I probably would have done the same. One of them, Johns Hopkins University, because he lived nearby, said to one of the researchers, look, have him come in, talk to him, give him a coffee cup with the logo on it, send him on his way. But at least hear about he's showing initiative, They bring him in, they listen to him for a bit, and they go, wow, this guy's actually thought about this. They brought everybody else in, spent 2 days with him, and they said, you know what, give him the 4 months of lab space, it costs us nothing to do. Turns out the kid is correct. So this 14-year-old has transformed pancreatic cancer from 98% mortality to 98% survival by searching Google. And our current education system, top to bottom, does not serve that kid at all. He goes outside the education system to do everything that he's learned around this. And so this is the fundamental breakage. There's unbelievable potential in that younger generation, as you're probably seeing. And our current systems are designed 100% to not find that genius. And that's the challenge. Now, that can't sustain, it'll break. The only question is how quickly. I have a 7-year-old. I pray for the day that the university model breaks so that I don't have to send them through university. Not to wax lyrical about it. So thank you very much.
What I'd like to do, please, is to invite the international coaches who have come down here from various parts of the world to come here so that we can acknowledge them, thank them, and Luciana is there, Paul is here, Sahar, We have Rob's come from, just to give you an idea, and Heinrich from Denmark, Edwin from Mexico, Seher from Bahrain. I just wanted to say that here is a wonderful group of people who have come in here to help you, serve you, and take on this whole community, the businesses that we've got, the businesses that we're addressing. Can we put the ExO logo there, please? No, not the video, but the logo, so that the images can come. Yeah. All right. So any thoughts, any comments that you guys have that you want to share with the community? Paul is our head coach and a leader here. Cristiano has come from Italy. He's a shadow coach. He's getting into it. Rob's been in retail. So what we are looking at here is domain expertise coming down with a working model, with a working formula, and then drilling deep and showing the methodology of how it can be achieved. And this is the championship team. And that's why I wanted to put them up there so that we can applaud them, we can acknowledge them. And if you want to say something, please do. Paul.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I can say here is change is not optional anymore. Get your ass out of your offices and do a change. One or the other way, you will be disrupted. We see it over and over and over again. And people are sleeping. Sorry that I'm so rude, but that is what I see every day. I'm presenting all over the world, and every presentation, the same story. People don't see it. Go home, and what we are doing today is what we do tomorrow, and that's the same what we did yesterday.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so just a few words from me. So just wanted to say that I've participated in several sprints, and every time is even a learning process for us. It's very exciting. The things I learned is that basically tackling the immune system is a daily thing, right? And I've seen a lot of the teams growing throughout the process in the way that they actually are able to handle this. And this is super crucial because, as some were here reflecting on, you need to really transform yourself. So one of the key things is, how do you manage that in a daily way? So thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having us here.
She's from Chile.
I'm coming from Chile, by the
from
way,
Chile.
so you have to add another continent. But yeah, we're here to listen to your challenges, to hear, what you want to change, what you want to do. So really looking forward to having this conversation with you and helping you through this transformation that we know is super hard, but it needs to be done. And yeah, you count on us.
Hello, thank you to everybody. In Italy, we have 10% of the companies and executives that are ready for disruption, are ready for an exponential change. And we have 90% of the company that are still thinking that is not necessary. I think that our mission is to increase this percentage and to contribute to change the future of the business.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, right, it's not about technology. We talk a lot about technology today, but it's a lot about mindset change. And what I like personally, I've been doing some speaking engagements in like Thailand, Bangkok, Singapore, where I came from indeed. And it's that system shock, right, that I'm very eager to explore. And that goes from executive team to floor staff, basically. But it's key to keep in mind is as soon as you change the mindset, right, the future is becoming a lot more proof. Or you become a lot more future-proof as well, right? So it's not just about implementing AI or blockchain or digital biology itself. That's a tool, right, to enable you to change your industry, society or the planet for the better.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Edwin from Mexico, and one question that I don't get tired of asking myself is, for some reason, why does Uber don't come from the transport industry? Why Airbnb is not coming from the hotel industry? Why Wikipedia is not coming from the encyclopedia industry? Why YouTube is not coming from the media industry? And a lot of examples. What I really love about this community is that we are working on this kind of transformation and disruption on the industries, and this is happening every industry. The real transformation is coming in the outside, not in the inside. So we need to adapt.
Heinrich's come all the way from Denmark.
I did, indeed.
And he's an expert in the medical sector. And we are looking at and working with some hospitals and so on, and he's going to be doing a drill down in that. Please.
Thank you, and I just want to echo what has been said so far. This is about mindset change in the corporations. We need to do something fundamentally different than we have done before. And we are here to help you do that. Thank you.
This is a really interesting point around how you have to think differently around the world. Disruptive innovation always comes from outside your industry. Always. And that's one of the key bases for why you need to turn inside out and look a lot more outside. It was fascinating to me at Yahoo when I got there for a little bit, and I found that 99.9% of the conversation in any corridor between any two people was about what was happening inside the company. And almost nothing was about what's happening outside the company. And you're like, wait a minute, everything outside is totally disrupting us, and all the conversation is on the inside.
Hi, sorry, you can hear me. My name is Ajlangun. I live here actually for the last 8 years, so I have been through the similar problems in the different industries as well. So my advice would be probably try to disrupt your comfort zones. So because when you try to disrupt your comfort zones, you will understand that your comfort zone is not giving you what you want to achieve in terms of the disruption. So it will actually help you to, move to the next stage.
Hi, my name's Debbie. I live here in Dubai. I work mostly in Saudi. And I've witnessed the culture there and have found some real pearls of change and willingness to change. And I think the one thing that we learned today in a previous workshop to this one was tap into the young people in your company. We worked with an organization who brought their leaders and their young people. And the two together came up with some really exciting ideas. So the youth is wide open.
Thank you. And Sahar from Bahrain.
Yes,
please.
Yeah. Sahar from Bahrain. I'm from the region. I'm a shadow coach. Thanks to Paul, he introduced me to the great team at OpenExO. I think what I can add is that given we're focused on technology in the region here, we're still focusing on new technologies instead of solving problems and solving the whatever industry problems that we have. So I hope that we will benefit from the exponential organization's methodology. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. A big hand for them. They're the ones who are going to make it happen. And as I said, World Championship team in transformation, they're all here, right in front of you.